Citizens of 15 African countries will have to post bonds of up to $15,000 to visit the United States. According to a new temporary travel rule, which comes into effect on December the 24th, CGTN's Wilkister Nyabwa has that report.
According to the United States State Department, the 6-month pilot program, which targets visitor and business visas, is geared towards deterring visitors who overstay their visas. The visa bond rule targets countries whose nationals had an overstay rate of 10% or higher in 2019. The citizens of the countries on the list will now be required to pay a refundable bond of $5,000, $10,000 or $15,000 when they apply for a U.S. visa. The amount of the bond will be determined by the consular officer based on the circumstances of the visa applicant. The African countries affected include Angola, Burkina Faso, Chad, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Eritrea, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Libya, Mauritania, Sudan, Sao Tome and Principe, and Burundi. President Donald Trump made restricting immigration a central part of his 4-year term in office. Joe Biden has pledged to reverse many of the Republican president's immigration policies, but untangling hundreds of changes could take months or even years. Wilkister Nyabwa, CGTN.
Well, let's now cross over to Professor Patrick Bond. He is a political and economic analyst from Wits University School of Governance in Johannesburg to look deeper into the impact of Trump's new rules for travelers, for African travelers. Professor Bond, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. $15,000 or even $5,000 is quite an exorbitant amount. What is the impact of these rules to African travelers?
Yes, thanks. Just a little correction. I've moved to the University of Western Cape School of Government. And indeed, as you say, it's really a kind of class apartheid. And we've already seen the Islamophobia that informs Donald Trump's ban on many countries, citizens even traveling to New York to change their airplane at JFK Airport. That was in the first months of his administration. And I think what's critical is he's now saying that until at least April, which is a 6-month, well, it'll go till June actually, end of June, that there's this experiment to see whether the consular offices can handle these large amounts of money. And of course, that's going to prevent the kind of interaction of small businesses, of academics, of politicians, people who would need to go back and forth regularly to the US or even now and again. And I think it reflects in his dying days of his presidency the resurgence of the racism, of the Islamophobia, of this class distinction. So only rich Africans might be able to go over. And of course, the backdrop is that there will be still COVID-19 restrictions on flying. So we don't really know how important this is going to be given the rest of the context, but we just hope that Joe Biden, as he comes in with a brand new Secretary of State announced today, Tony Blinken, can quickly reverse this amongst a variety of the other racist and xenophobic and Islamophobic policies.
On that, Professor Bond, though, the whole question of what exactly President-elect Joe Biden can be able to do, what is the likelihood that the President-elect will reverse many of the Republican president's immigration policies, including this particular one?
Well, the first thing everybody talks about is the wall between Mexico and the US as the main immigration policy. And that's because Donald Trump had run for president using the racism against Mexican Americans, Latinx people. He even said these people are coming across the border and they're rapists. So terrible generalizations. Now that wall it was difficult for them to fund it and it won't go anywhere. But the real dilemma is whether Biden and especially the Secretary of State, who's, as I say, just been announced today, Tony Blinken, will look more favorably upon Africa. It wouldn't be hard because the other point that you made at the beginning of the broadcast that Ngozi Konjo-Iweala, who's the former Nigerian finance minister, is now going to become the World Trade Organization Director General. Donald Trump had been vetoing that, slowing it down, sabotaging it, as he was doing the WTO. And I think that's one of the most interesting questions. When we see the paleo-conservative Donald Trump, an old xenophobic and racist dinosaur, a paleo-conservative, being replaced by Joe Biden, and now Tony Blinken as the Secretary of State. Will that affect Africa? And what we know about Blinken is that he was very involved in promoting the Obama war on Libya that was so controversial. The African Union said, don't do it. And Obama went ahead and got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, but left Libya and the whole region in that area of the Sahel in absolute chaos. And Blinken was very much behind that policy. So we will look to see whether there will be not just reversals from Donald Trump's extreme form of imperialism, but whether we're going to see a new kind of imperialism based on militarism, because Blinken comes from the military-industrial complex recently, and neoliberalism, big corporates from the US getting their way. And of course, the biggest question is whether the WTO under Ikonjo Owala will enforce intellectual property rights on vaccines for COVID-19, and that remains to be seen.
Professor Patrick Bond joining us there from Johannesburg.